to America is be true to what you said on paper.
The faith, the devotion, which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. By any means necessary.
I'm just going to go into, look, today is Juneteenth, and I usually start off the show with an editorial, and of course I have one. And it starts off basically with the fact that I've been getting a lot of texts and phone calls today, and I appreciate it, you know, the sentiment of happy Juneteenth, which, to be honest, I think myself and some other people probably have a similar feeling about how are we supposed to respond. Are we supposed to say, thank you, I guess? This whole thing with Juneteenth reminds me of Frederick Douglass, and who's a distant cousin of my family's. And in this speech that he gave, which was, what to the slave is the 4th of July? And he talked about the distance that he had made from being on a slave plantation to the podium that he stood at giving this speech. And I feel like the similitude of what he was saying about the cutoff, the space between that is like this cutoff between the slave who escaped from slavery or tried to escape, but then was caught, and then their hand or their foot was cut off. And so when you say happy Juneteenth, I have to think about the fact that we're celebrating the fact that there were 400 years of slavery. And that at some point, 2.5 years later, after the president freed the slaves, that they were able to be free. I'm sorry, I'm cutting off right now because I'm wondering if you all can hear me right now. So that all said, you know, the slave had to go through 400 years of slavery. And then since then, we've been going through a whole lot ourselves. And we are still aren't free from the watchful eye of the slave patroller or being asked for our slave papers. Because every time we get pulled over by the police and the police officer asks us for our license and registration, to me, it's like you're asking, are you free? Are you a citizen? Where are you from? And for us, we still can't seem to get away from the jittery finger of the police officer. So we're not free. And so today is about commemoration, and it is about celebrating the progress that we've made since the end of slavery, but it's also about making sure that we continue to tell our story about slavery. I want to tell you all a quick story about my name, Atiba Okong Bajun. And oftentimes in business settings, I have been asked by colleagues about my name, which means Atiba, understanding, Okong, first son, Bajun, subservient to God. And when people, typically white, ask me about my name, what they're trying to do is get to the meaning of or where I'm from, my last name. And whether or not people recognize it or realize that or not, that's what they're doing. So I'm gonna tell you that when I'm asked that question, I often just say back to people, well, my father's from North Carolina, well, from Washington, D.C., but grew up in North Carolina. My mom is from Virginia. And then they ask me again, well, Atiba, no, but like your name, like where's your family from? Well, their parents are from Virginia. My dad's parents are from North Carolina. No, like your name, like where are you from? Where's your family from? What's your family origin? To which then after you've asked me 2, 3, or 4 times and I've tried to absolve you of that, and you keep asking, then my response is this. Well, see, your people came to Africa and stole my people and brought them here. No, is their response. That's not what I mean, that's what I mean. No, but that's what you keep asking, so let me tell you that when your people brought my people here, they whipped us, they beat us, they told us what our name was supposed to be, not what our name already had been by their parents, who to follow, how to act, where we could go, where we couldn't go, when we could eat, when we could drink. And so my parents, being the conscious people that they are, when I was born, chose Atiba Okong. And my last name was actually Harris when I was born, but my parents became Muslim and they changed our last name when I was about 4 years old. So in a sense, they decided that they wanted to pick their religion, pick a religion that that worked for them, that didn't feel like somebody had beaten it into us as slaves. And it, for me, has always connected me to someone in history who Americans now look at as a hero and the greatest champion of all, Muhammad Ali. And I'm going to leave you all with his words. I am America, and I am the part you won't recognize. But get used to me. I'm black, I'm confident, I'm cocky. It's my name, not yours. It's my religion, it's my goals, it's my own. Get used to me. So when you say happy Juneteenth, thank you, I guess. So as I was doing that, I wasn't quite certain if you all could still hear me and everything, but apparently you were. And I just want to tell you all that this Juneteenth I think is more special. When I say more special, it's very special in the fact that I think that there are some things that are going on from the very top levels of this government that are have created mass division within this country, much more than what we had before, because we've always said that there was division. But where we are now as a nation and where we're going, we got to get there together. And we're not going to get there together unless we're listening to each other. And we're not listening to each other if we're not talking. And we've got to tell our story. And that's what this is about. That's what I think Juneteenth is about. That my hope is that there are people that are out there that are listening and people that are want to know more. And so we're going to keep telling that story. And with that all said, our show is special today. We've got a few people that are going to be coming on. I am checking to see who's here, to see what we got. Okay, so we've got, so we're gonna have JSmiles and we're gonna have Dr. Rickie Keyes. We're gonna come on, but first off, we're going to bring on JSmiles, we're gonna bring on Dr. Rickie Keyes to have a quick conversation, and then we're gonna go into give it to you, our cautious comment. So with that all said, Dr. Rickie Keyes, how you doing? I can't hear Rickie.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. How you doing?
Okay, I'm well, and I apologize. I'm trying to remove the profile picture so that you could.
So we can see you.
There you go.
It's funny, this whole thing with Zoom, because I think everybody's kind of, I've had times when I've been on meetings, I'm trying to figure out how do I share my screen? How do I do this? So we're all learning, but I'm glad you were able to join us. And I know you have a short window, but we're gonna bring you back on again, but you've got some real important data and things that you and I have worked together for, I guess we've known each other for close to 20 years now. Your work has been in the health space. And right now, the world is talking a lot about Black Lives Matter, but I think a lot of this has all come about because we also got stopped in our tracks because of a pandemic that is now worldwide, that has affected and impacted all of us. So if you could give us a little bit about what it is, the lay of the land that you're seeing from that standpoint, maybe how this all relates to in terms of why our health is important, where we are right now with Juneteenth. Yes,
and I think your monologue, your opening statement was absolutely on point. You know, it's funny that I had people when we were working years ago who would ask, okay, so Atiba, that's an interesting name. Where is Atiba from? And I would say he's from Virginia. he went to school in Virginia. What are you talking about? He's from DC. He went to school in Virginia. But I mean, it's really interesting. We're at a really crazy time in life where, the issue of health disparities is something that you and I have been dealing with for a very, very long time. Health disparities is not just the chronic diseases that cause of COVID-19 to significantly impact our people, but it's, false imprisonment. It's, incarceration. It's all of those things. We need to use data and research and science to make the case for why we need the resources that we need. And candidly, this is an issue of resource allocation. One of the biggest challenges that we have is that African-American school districts are not resourced properly. But we don't have banks, we don't have pharmacies, we don't have grocery stores. There's a whole lot of things that we need to have a meaningful conversation about. We just can't leave this at, COVID-19 impacted African-Americans because they had pre-existing conditions. No, there are underlying conditions that caused those conditions to exist and to be exacerbated in our community. When Freddie Gray, and you and I were talking about this earlier this week, when Freddie Gray died, one of the biggest challenges that I had was when, and justifiably, people were really upset in Maryland and Baltimore. They burned down the pharmacies. One of the biggest challenges that I have is that, unfortunately, those pharmacies were in communities that desperately needed those pharmacies, and we were devoid of pharmacies anyway. And then now that you have a lower number of pharmacies, people had to go further and further distances and pay higher and higher prices to get the pharmaceutical medication that they needed to address those chronic diseases that caused COVID-19 to significantly impact our community.
Yeah, so that said, people have said things like, oh, well, I read other people's posts that aren't necessarily for the cause. And they're on their posts like, I don't understand why Black people are burning down and looting down this and tearing down this and what have you. I want to use that as a reminder to say, well, first off, it was our blood, sweat, and tears that built this country.
Unquestionably.
And we were never, and I like to recall Dr. King's speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial when he said, "We're here to return a check this check that was come back to us marked insufficient funds." And so, this whole thing, people talk about, oh, well, you're burning your own thing, you're looting your own thing. It's never been ours, and I think that's the argument. And there'll be some people that will say, well, you've got this, and you've got some famous people this or whatever. Well, we don't, one, have enough, and two, you look at someone like LeBron James, and I use him as an example because of what happened when he made comments, and then Drew Brees made some comments, and LeBron says something, and he says, shut up and go dribble. Right. Drew Brees says something, as long as it falls within the white complex or whatever idea, oh, it's okay, and the media, shoots it off. So that all said, I think that a lot of the awareness and things that are going on today, and going back to my editorial, in terms of Happy Juneteenth, well, we want to commemorate this, and we want to celebrate the fact that, yes, we have had successes, but as you just said, and what we want to do is have you back on and talk about these things. When people talk about the fact that we have high levels of hypertension, diabetes, you see a lot of dialysis businesses in our communities. You also see a lot of food deserts in our community. That all this is systemic, and it's part of a systemic problem that's also linked to the overcharging, the pulling us over, that the stresses or what have you of just being Black in America. Yeah, I'm not really too yet ready for you to say Happy Juneteenth, because I feel like we still are not free, and we're not free because we still have not been able to cash that check that was returned to us with insufficient funds. So I'm gonna let you say a couple more words, and then I know you got to get out of here.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Dr. King's statement is something that's resonant with me because, it's about resources. If you don't have the resources in your community, if you don't have the things that are desperately needed in your community, obviously it's harder for you to have what one would consider parity or equality. So, a kid at a poor performing school, there's a great likelihood that school is under-resourced. And it's not just with education, it's with, as you said, food, it's with, pharmacies, it's with hospitals, it's with doctors' offices. It's just across the board. We have to demand that the resource, and we're going to invest in sports teams and make, you know, those kinds of investments in the Redskins, or, you know, I jumped on Drew Brees really hard because I'm a New Orleans Saints fan. But if we're going to make those types of investments in those football teams and those sporting events or those kinds of activities, we need to make investments in the people who, as you said, were the ones that built up this country. And it's not a social, you know, compact. It is a political compact. We've supported people, and we need to get what's rightfully ours.
Amen, amen. And you're a New Orleans Saints fan. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, and at some point I'm gonna really get into Dak Prescott and his insistence about not taking a knee. But that's gonna be a conversation for another day. But Dr. Keyes, thank you very, very much for joining us. And I look forward to us having you back on the show when we have a longer opportunity to talk.
Sounds good. I look forward to it, Atiba.
All right. I would say happy Juneteenth, but I hope that you enjoy it today.
Right. Right. All right.
All right, brother. Take care. All right. So with that, thank you, Dr. Keyes. And so, you know, we had the editorial. Well, we've had music. We had editorial. We had Dr. Keyes talking about our health. And right now, I'm very excited to be introducing to you JSmiles, who is the Conscious Comic. She is, she's an amazing person. I don't know how she wants me to just introduce her because she's like so many different things, but amazing, funny, conscious. And that all said, I am going to turn this over to JSmiles.
Hello, everybody. I agree with you, Atiba. I do not say happy Juneteenth because, first of all, nothing was happy about that day, and we are not free yet. I feel like it's coming. It's really weird that I don't see myself, but I'm going to keep going because the chat box is saying that I am on. All right. Yes, we can see you. So I'm a turn around and start over. I'm a comedian. What's up, people? So I'm JSmiles, and I am here to bring you a bit of a comedic editorial. I call it a combinatorial. Made that word up. Okay, that's fine. My goal here is to give a little history, a little humor, and a little hope. You know what I mean? Kind of hopefully in that order. Everything has been super crazy in our world, and we all know that, right? But I want to start off and just get people to really think and realize and be comfortable with the fact that we've always had the struggle. I mean, nothing has ever come easy for humans, for any human, not just Black people. Anytime somebody that did not have power wanted equality and power, they had to fight for it. If you, no matter what you look in, any book of anything holy, or even if you look at Asian stuff, the point is everybody fights. We fight, humans fight. Now the goal is to try to die as less as possible. I'm sorry, dying ain't funny. But the point is you don't want to die as often as you fight. You want to fight in a righteous manner. But I need everybody to chill on this notion that we've been doing this for 400 years. In the scheme of humanity, what? Blink, 400 years just happened. All right? Like China over there, they got like 3,000 years according to whatever their manifesto is on Mandarin language, and who knows whatever happened before they recorded that. And if we go back to Egyptian, and that's just what we know about people. We know about people 5,000 years old, and okay, so 400 years, right? But I ain't gonna lie, y'all, all right? I want everybody to have a little bit of hope. In 400 years, excuse my language, we kicking ass. For 400 years, if you think about where we started in this country 400 years ago and where our oppressors wanted us to be, I would need y'all to go drink a Coca-Cola or a cognac or some water or whatever it is. Now, I ain't saying the fight is over, but don't let them push you down and make you feel like you a loser because you ain't quite got there. Come on. What they got? What have the other people gotten that's better than us within these same 400 years? Come on, people, be proud. Rise up. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and then I want us to think about, like, when people push at us and they try to say, well, I mean, with police brutality, I mean, but, well, JSmiles, how do we know that that black man or that black woman didn't do something to incite that officer? How do we know that they didn't spit on that officer, or they weren't rude to that officer, or maybe they were resisting arrest, right? And as my good God-fearing black person, as my mama raised me to be, I go around trying to figure out how to explain to them how that happened and how come that ain't what they should be thinking about, right? But think about it like this, y'all. That's what they used to say to battered women. Well, you know, 50, 60 years ago, before we had domestic violence laws, they would say, well, Susie, what did you do to John to make him smash your face in the wall when he came home from work? Right? Right? Or to the little kid, the little girl that was abused, violently, sexually abused by her uncle. Well, she's 9 years old. Well, what were you wearing? Little girl, what were you wearing that made your uncle think you were being promiscuous? What? Yo, it's the same sick mentality. Yo, these people have mental illness. That is why mental health awareness is a thing, right? The issue is when people with mental health are in power, we in trouble. If a judge or a lawyer or a doctor or a police officer or a district attorney says, well, what did you do to deserve to be put in the chokehold? Soon as they ask me that question, shut up. I ain't talking no more. Cause you crazy. You crazy for even asking me questions like that. It's like, listen, we no longer feel like, because we want to hold an abusive husband accountable, that means we're throwing all husbands in the garbage. We no longer feel like, because we want to throw a abusive priest in jail and hold a Catholic Church accountable, we no longer feel like that means we hate all people of the clergy. We no longer feel like, because we want that one crazy uncle that tried to rape Tanisha, because we put him in jail, that don't mean we hate all our uncles. We hate the uncles that rape us. And I think that, I think that's all right. I think that's all right. What about the golden rule? Right? So many of these people that are like pushing us to be like, you know what? Y'all should pray more and go to church. Whole bunch of them Christian. From what I remember, I'm Christian too. The golden rule is the first thing Jesus talked about: do unto others. I want one of these police officers to tell me which one of them want us to shoot them when they got a toy water gun, Tamir Rice. Which one of them want us to shoot them when they running away? Rashard. Which one of them want to be kneeled on the knee with the neck in the broad daylight on your back, on your stomach? George. Which one of y'all feels like if that was done to you, it would have been justified? I'm sorry. I'm listening. Right. Crickets, because they don't want that. I'm going to tell you something else. This is how I know racism is so still alive in America, and it's a sickness, right? It's a sickness. Y'all, real talk, COVID ain't killing us. Racism is killing us. Racism is by far the most prevalent and the most vicious virus humanity has ever known. Racism was man-made, which means man can fix it. We can actually eradicate it, but we won't. Mental health. These people are sick up here. You know what I'm saying? Let me tell you how I know how racism still controls this country. Proof, the Confederate flag. Y'all hear me? The Confederate flag. I'm gonna keep it real simple. Okay. The Confederacy lasted 4 years. 4 years, people. The Confederacy officially lasted 4 years. That's high school, people. High school. How many of y'all are willing to fight to the death, argue with people, and shoot them over your high school mascot? Do you even remember what your high school mascot was? Okay, so 4 years. And they lost. Do you know how un-American it is to lose and talk about it? Right? But racism is so charged and it's so popular with some people in this country that what? We can even lose. It's okay to it's okay to lose and celebrate it for over 160 years. But really, it was about power, because the only power the Southern states ever had was in the economic power of the physical labor of the enslaved Africans. And I don't say slaves because we were never slaves. We were enslaved. Boom, boom. Words matter. Words matter. Do y'all, man, that got me so hyped. Okay, listen. So do y'all, how many people really have absorbed the fact that George Floyd was murdered on Memorial Day? Memorial Day. Do y'all know how accustomed most citizens in America are for getting passes, right? From all the city government, from all the police officers, because we having picnics and block parties and street parties. Everybody that had a couple beers, some wine, you know what I'm saying? A little vodka, couple shots of tequila, right? Got it. I see my timeline. So on the day that's normally very jubilant, and everybody's, and the police are normally a little more like, yeah, long as you ain't killing nobody, we ain't gonna bother you. Y'all go ahead and have a good time. They took George out for maybe, allegedly, a $20 counterfeit bill. Now, I'm also a lawyer. I looked it up. The maximum penalty in Minnesota for a $20 bill, not even a year in jail. I'm gonna wrap it up with this. I want to tell you this. Listen, people, stay hopeful, stay engaged, stay active. White women in particular, we need you. When you get involved with our struggle, that's when it changes. It always has. In suffrage, in the voting rights. I'm from Montgomery, Alabama. When Viola Lizzo, look her up. When Viola Lizzo came in, boom, that is when she came down, and it hit that this white woman came down to help the marchers in Alabama. And when she was killed, they said, we got to get involved. That was too much. Thank you all for joining our cause. We got work to do, but we winning. Thank you. Now I'm gonna get my headphones and join the conversation. Mr. Atiba.
Miss JSmiles, thank you so much. That was phenomenal. And the reason why we wanted to have you, and we hope that I'd love to have you come back again, because not only, that was very engaging, I want to say funny, but it was just, it's just who you are. It's just very, how can I say it? Educational. I didn't even recognize or catch the fact that George Floyd was killed on Memorial Day. And I think that's a really interesting piece. And then you're also mentioning the fact that him, because they still haven't said that he was passing a $20 bill. They just, like you said allegedly. This man lost his life because they say he allegedly was passing a $20 bill. And, you know, the fact that that's only punishable by a year in prison at best, it says a lot. So, and then I like how you ended it, because I agree with you 100%. We need more champions, but we do need our white sisters to be part of this cause, as we do need like the rest of the world, because there's so many people that are around the world who are messaging me and sending me news stories that I don't even see. So collectively, the more eyes, the more hearts, the more souls that we have to this, the faster and the quicker that we get past this. But that all said, before we go on, JSmiles, I want to bring on our other panel, my distinguished co-host, Earl Wyatt, Nayada Cowherd, Seldom Seen, and then we're also going to bring on DJ Paul Howard, because what we want to do is we want to have in this session, before we open the mic up to our audience, we want to have a discussion about the role that music and comedy makes in activism. So with that said, I'm going to let Nayada, Earl, and Seldom say a few words, and then we're going to get into our discussion.
Hey, JSmiles. JSmiles still with us?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I was truly inspired by your
Hell yeah.
It also reminded me a lot of Dick Gregory's Party album.
Whoa, wait a minute. You should have told me to sit down. You can't do nothing like that to me. You know what I mean? That's
and from a standpoint of is that the evolution of the civil rights movement in the 50s was very much tied to a lot of the Dick Gregory sets about awareness, reality, reaction, but then also the functionality and the dysfunction of the two Americas at that particular time. And I think you amplified that beautifully in terms of referencing how things change when more people come to the table of change. So thank you so much for that.
I'm extraordinarily humbled and touched by that. Dick Gregory, you don't even know what that, you know, we can talk about this offline, but in particular, what he means to me, again, I'm Montgomery, Alabama. I come from activists from the last 5 generations. And so Dick Gregory is that dude. I've met him several times before he passed. And just for you to even say his name with mine, seriously, I got goosebumps. So thank you very much.
JSmiles, I'm going to throw something out too, Pat. So a few years ago, I was supposed to speak at a conference. And when I get there, I knew that I'm supposed to be part of a panel. When I arrived there, the head of the conference comes up to me and pulls me to the side and says, Atiba, I'm sorry, there's a little bit of a change in the program. So I said, okay. And I have no idea what he's about to say, but you know, you just kind of roll with the punches. He says, well, we're going to put you on the bigger panel, and there's only going to be 2 people. And so I was like, okay, so who's the other person? He goes, Dick Gregory.
Wow.
And I was like, you got to be effing kidding me. I went outside, I picked up the phone, I called my dad. I'm like, Daddy, you're not going to believe who I'm about to like basically open up for. And he's like, who? I said, Dick Gregory. And so I say that because that one, I probably read through my speech really fast because I was like, how in the world am I supposed to open up before Dick Gregory? But the conversation I had afterwards, and just in terms of how much knowledge he always dropped. I think Seldom did a great job of comparing what you just did just now to Mr. Gregory. And so thank you so much for being that conscious comic with us today. Nayada, you got something?
So, I mean, of course, you know, all the sentiments. Dick Gregory, it was one of my favorite comedians, but activists. And I had the pleasure of knowing him personally as well. And he, you know, if you didn't listen, you just didn't want to hear. So, so I love the fact that we use our comedy for awareness and to educate. And I think that's a phenomenal thing that I think a lot of people actually, I remember I used to get my news from The Daily Show. because I mean, I couldn't bear to watch the news. It was horrible. But the Daily Show and other shows like it would bring a different perspective, and they weren't necessarily bound by the bureaucracy of it all. So I definitely appreciate that. But on the flip side, I want to bring DJ Paul Howard in and talk about music as activism as well. And how, I mean, you know, all the conscious music, man, the 90s, I mean, like I'm so blessed that I was able to grow and live in that time. I found out who I was through conscious music of the 90s. The music today, I mean, obviously there was still some horrible music or some ratchet music in the 90s, but today, I mean, I feel like it's just it runs rampant, and that's all that there is. So can you talk to us a little bit about music as activism and?
Yeah, you know, music as activism has always been a part of hip hop. You know, if you go back to the early days with the Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, when they did that song, The Message, to me, that's like the first song that really had activism in its music. You know, and then KRS-One came with Boogie Down Production. They had a lot of activism in their songs, and then Public Enemy, X-Clan, you know, and that was kind of back before hip hop kind of got co-opted and the money stream started to flow into hip hop. Right. So it started to, you know, meld into a different form. But even when it melded into a different form, you still had your conscious groups. You know, like I said, you still had your PE, still had your X-Clan, KRS was still dropping knowledge, and even some of the quote-unquote non-conscious cats, you know, they put conscious songs on their albums too. And, you know, that's how a lot of folks learned about Malcolm X. That's how a lot of folks learned about Harry Tubman and all those other revolutionary freedom fighters, was because the artists put it in the music. Right. And then, yeah, you know, today's, you know, the youngins, they have some growing up to do in terms of the content they put into their music. But I will give some folks some credit. This cat, Lil Baby, you know, there's a whole lot of Lils out there. Wayne, right. Lil Baby, Lil Sean. So he put out a song a couple of days ago that is, I forgot the name of it, but, you know, it's very current, very relevant, and it speaks to the time from his generation's standpoint. So, you know, the thing that I kind of talk to the adults and the people of our generation, you know, there's some cats out there, but they're learning, right? You know, and you know, us as adults and those that have been through the 90s, you know, that I call it the golden era of hip hop music, period. You know, we gotta, you know, help bring them up, school them, let them know what happened and took place so that they can start to form the revolution. 'Cause, you know, I watched the Dave Chappelle special, and one thing he said that was kind of poignant to me was that he said he was fine in the back seat now. You know, he drove the car for a long time, and he saw that this generation is kind of pushing this revolution forward, and he was comfortable sitting in the back seat. You know, he'll lend his advice. Okay, you know, turn right here, turn left here, but he seems real comfortable in the youth, and I'm kind of taking that mindset too. You know, I'm comfortable in the back seat. You know, I'm seeing the Tamika Mallory's, and may she rest in peace, Oluwatoyin. You know, she was a very dynamic freedom fighter too before, you know, she lost her life untimely. But music heals, you know, and music is a way in which a lot of people get relief, they get knowledge, they get content, and they get growth. So it's always been a part.
Fantastic.
I think, you know, one of the things too, and I always kind of, if we even go back further than like the most recent window, if we think about a lot of the Southern songs that came out of the fields in which our ancestors picked, or the brothers who worked on the railroad who were part of the track gangs, there was a subtlety and a message of empowerment, to look over your shoulder, to be aware. And I think that's one of the things that is also dynamic about what music has meant to us over the last 160 years in America, is that it's been in our cadence, it's been our rhythm, but it's been in our speak, and the speak that is universal amongst the African American experience in America. And I think that is probably one of the most profound moments that we have in our lives right now, is to kind of look.
Uh-oh, did we lose Seldom?
Oh no.
Yeah, but you know what he said
That
was
I can
important.
think of.
No.
There he
You
is.
can't lose Seldom. You can't lose Seldom.
We can't lose him.
He's unstoppable.
Yeah, sorry. So I mean, I just think about it that
Go down the black man. Come on now.
I just look at it from that context. I think that is very important when we think about the albums. I think very much about Curtis Mayfield. I think about the early Al Greens. I think about going back to the 50s and 60s in terms of how my mom used to pick the songs that played in my grandfather's restaurant, because she said that was a moment where she could pick the songs that were relevant to her generation to kind of help empower people to move beyond where they were. But it also had a subtle message. The one thing that concerns me now is that this generation could put an album directly out before there was no filtering. There's no filtering of what they can put out. I wish the quality and the messaging was much more profound in terms of what's out there now versus back in the day when you had the Chess Records or Philadelphia and all those other kind of moments. So,
agreed.
I want to say that I totally appreciate the people who seem to be on the front lines of the protest physically out in the street.
Right.
They are Gen Z, right? So technically, I'm Gen X.
Right.
And for the most part, I know some people have babies at 67 and others have babies at 12, but I'm not talking about those. I'm not talking about the margins. I'm going right down the middle. I'm talking about the middle. So for the most part, Gen Z, that's our babies. Now, I don't have any kids, but I'm claiming these. I got a whole bunch of God kids. But Gen Z, they actually, in my opinion, are proof that integration was worth it. There's a whole lot of folks that have said over time, well, we had more something and blah, whatever. I don't have more.
I think, sorry.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it up and I'm going to toss it right on over there. So the thing is, I'm like, I never agree with that. Okay. Right. But Gen Z and their response, their immediate response after George Floyd, without them having a unilateral leader. That's what's so exciting to me. We don't know who in the world is telling them where to meet in DC or Atlanta or Cleveland or Toronto, which also means the distractors and the anti-protesters don't know either, right? They could get to Dr. King or Malcolm X or Jesse Jackson because they were like, if we just follow him or her, right? Mary McLeod Bethune, we get to her, then her flock will stop. With these kids, this Gen Z, you don't know. I love it. I love the fact that their movement doesn't have a noticeable public leader. I think that's amazing. And they are proof, again, that integration works. They went to school with these kids. They didn't have play dates. Like I was bused. All right, I was in Montgomery, Alabama. I got bused because there weren't enough black people at the school. So I was forced like this at the lunchroom with my hands folded because I didn't want to be there. All right. But these kids actually are on the cheer team together because they want to be with Becky and Karen. And so now Karen is like, what you mean? You know what I'm saying? They like me and Tanisha been friends. We've been on the swim team together since we 12. And now that Karen is standing in front of Tanisha's brother like this.
Right.
So the police won't shoot him in Atlanta on the bridge. I'm like, oh. So even back in the day when there were Caucasians who were joining our movement, they wasn't in front of the gun.
No.
And they weren't in this many numbers. Like these white kids are pissed. They are looking at their parents like, you told me you weren't racist and it looked like you are. And I'm mad.
It's true.
You know, it's kind of like the, you know, when after this last election, we kept hearing this term, the silent majority. But now we're getting to hear from the boisterous majority that is very strategic. And I've even had people ask me like, well, where are the leaders? And this is so impressive to watch and to be able to sit in the back seat, for instance, you know, and to be able to see what's going on because the energy is really amazing. But I think too, for me, that's very inspiring is to watch the recognition that's going on around the world of people recognizing that. And I feel that, for lack of a better way of saying it, it's as if they're realizing that we've been the experiment, but what they've been doing to us, they recognize what has been being done to them also. And so we're all recognizing we're all in this together, and we can get out of this together a lot faster. With that said, do we have anybody who's on the line, Earl, who wants to come on?
Not yet, but I actually wanted to jump in myself.
Earl's like, yes.
Let's make a call. If you're interested in coming on and sharing your experience, your thoughts, your ideas, just join us on the Zoom link. It should be in the podcast.
I'm putting it in there right now.
Hey, Earl, I'm gonna tap you in. I don't want you to have to introduce yourself.
I appreciate you.
Headphone. Is it time? Okay, listen. So I believe we have a caller. Yep. Look at that. Yes, Earl Wyatt from New York. From New York. Earl Wyatt from New York. In an office with a lot of fancy lighting in the book. And Earl Wyatt, what do you have to say today?
Okay, I want to start by saying I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. That's really important. Pretty intent listener.
We are happy to have you.
So what I did want to say, I really do mean this. Not only do I agree with everything Seldom said in terms of you definitely filling the role of where we needed Dick Gregory at this moment in this conversation on this show. I think you nailed it. I kept trying to message you when you were dropping bits. The high school bit was, you're brilliant. Just flat out brilliant. No other words for it. I will say that while I think you also nailed the integration part, I thought Separate but Equal wasn't working for us as well as people like to pretend it was. But the only people who were saying that are the people who were not around then. The people who were around at that time, who were adults at the time, recognized, I need access to better water, I need access to better food, I need access to better these things. And if I'm willing to work harder for it, why should I still be denied those things? And so that's also, I am worried that we have no focal leader right now. And not because I need a leader. I think everybody should be able to make decisions for themselves and be able to move things along. My concern is the other one. It's when there's a specific leader and someone's up for that task, you have a go-to for the press. There's somebody who you can attribute statements to. Right now, you could have 3 people agree that we need to fix the police issue in this country, and have 3 people willing to go to war with each other on the left, because that's how we do things, over what the right solution or verbiage should be as we fix it, which gets in the way of actually effing fixing it. Whereas if you had 1 or 2 or 3 people who were meeting with, if you had a Malcolm and a Martin who spoke when nobody was looking and said, I'll say this, you say that. I'll say this, you say that. You say that, I can't say this. We could actually have a concerted message. Right now, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of energy. There's no focus. There's no discipline. I'd love to see this energy become something focused. And I believe that Dick Gregory would agree with me right now that at the end of the day, people need to know who they're listening to and who they're following. Because as long as we all think we're following ourselves, we'll get closer. But a knife cuts way better, like a steak knife cuts way better than a butter knife. And that's because the focus is at a sharper incline. That's all I had to say about that. Now, let me see who else we got who wants to speak.
Well, I just want to say the ethos and the power of the internet is almost the thing that is so I'm just so fascinated with it. There are no leaders. They're just voices coming out of every crack and every seam in America on aspects of this injustice. And I am just so fascinated. I often joke and say Black folks invented the internet because nobody else would believe it otherwise if it wasn't there. And I just look at it from that standpoint, like it is an underground movement that is very reminiscent of the 1960s in terms, like I always say, the 5 major Black newspapers in America wrote more about civil rights than the larger publications. So it was always in the forefronts in the living rooms of Black America, wherever you work. Pittsburgh Carrier is always a great example of those stories that were carried deeper into the South. Absolutely. And how they wrote about them. And I think that's the awareness. And also too, like Jay was saying, that you said that LaQuisha was my friend and she's always welcome here. Why can't I go where she is because she's in pain right now? The level of empathy that has come out of this whole experience, starting with George Floyd and even going back further in time, is that black and white young women especially, are having conversations about why can't it be for me just like it was for you? And I think that has been the crossroads. And, you know, if we think about Barack Obama 11 years ago, Barack Obama won because children brought Barack Obama into their family's dining rooms.
Yep.
He forced young voters to ask their parents, well, why won't you vote for him? He's the best possible candidate. He has a story that's reminiscent of what grandma and grandpa, how they raised you. Why can't we vote for him? And that's where the change is going to be born this cycle and for future generations to go.
And to the point you just made, Earl, I believe that more, first, I'm not completely in agreement with the idea of like one leader. I am okay with, because then that's somebody you can kill and then we're lost for years, like what happened in the 60s. What I am okay with us having experts in certain areas. So I'm all right if we have an authority on police brutality and an authority on the environment. Because another thing is, what if the person that's the leader, what if I personally think they are an idiot? And I'm like, no, that cannot be the leader. Who voted that person leader? I'm defecting. I'm not going to be black this voting season. So anyway, that doesn't work. So that's one thing on that.
I was trying not to laugh out loud. I was trying to be a media professional for a couple of seconds.
Okay.
Fucking broke that. Thanks.
Okay, that's fine. And so that's that. And I also believe that, like in every other instance, our leaders emerge out of the crisis. Dr. King was 26 years old and had just become pastor in Montgomery, Alabama. Right. He didn't even want to lead the Montgomery bus boycott. They had to vote and beg him 18 million times. Johnny Cochran did not want to take the OJ case. They had to beg him, and he was like, I don't want to touch that. Are you kidding me? Ain't no money in it, and whoever do it is going to be dirt for the rest of their life. And he was right, but the right Black people kept begging him for months and months and months and months. So I believe that just like in the midterms, we got new leaders that went into Congress and became mayors and people on city council. Something will happen in the next 18 months and we will start to see some 20-somethings and some 30-somethings pop up and we're going to be like, hey, yeah, nice. That's what I believe. I don't really know who they're going to be. And the last bit I want to say is the reason I have led into comedy, because Atiba mentioned this. So academically, lawyer, engineer, product designer, philanthropist, some other stuff, blah, blah, blah.
Drop that resume, girl. Drop that resume.
I knew I liked you.
Man, your LinkedIn is 3 pages.
And once she finishes, I have some things I want to throw in on what she just said. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jerry.
Listen.
So she went to the county high school in Montgomery. Okay, go ahead. Okay.
Wow.
Oh, no, but really, the reason I'm saying that, okay, I appreciate all of that. I wasn't saying that for that particular reaction. I was saying it to say that comedy grabbed my heart so strong that even though I went to school all those freaking years and worked so hard in each of those arenas, I dropped those to come over here because of the social impact. I've noticed, looking back at history, there are a number of people that can move the needle of the masses. You can be a preacher, you can be a politician, you can be a comedian. The other two make me get a little bit of vomit in my mouth. Okay. So I was like, all right. I was like, because as a comedian, I can choose to say some very controversial things. Right. And it's okay. You might not like me at the end, but you probably will just say, it might not call me out my name. And I said, okay. So I decided to say, I'm going to take pen to paper and how do I attack these controversial and systemic issues with my pen?
So it's funny that you mentioned that.
I'm sorry, Nagata. I want to throw something else in, though. Go ahead, Nagata.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was going to say that politicians are still limited. Once they're in office, it's really, I mean, they have to be uber radical or crazy like somebody right now in Miami to do whatever it is that they want to do. And if you want to make impactful change, it's really hard to do that. as a politician, but as a comedian, as an activist, all kinds of change comes from there.
And
so I agree with you. I think you made the right choice not being.
I want to throw this in because Jay is being very humbled also. And another reason why, and I hope, I want to talk to you after this because I really liked how you presented things today. But Jay comes from a long line of activists. Her mom was the first African-American CPA in the city of Montgomery. Her dad had a law office, owned the largest collection of game-worn sports memorabilia in the world. Some of the items from that collection are in the African American History Museum. He went to Notre Dame but graduated undergrad from Tuskegee, and I could go on and on and on. But I'm saying all this to say, Dr. King spent time in her grandparents' home in Montgomery. Her grandfather was a deacon in that church. There's so many families across the country. We don't often talk about all of our stories, but there's so many different links that in the midst of history being made, we're just doing the work. We're just doing the work. And that's what I see these young people today who 10, 20, 30 years from now, people are going to be talking about what they did and how they led a leaderless movement that brought about change to a system that had been over 400 years oppressing people. And so, where we are and where this country is going, I know this is going to be controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway.
That's what I like.
We don't like the way that it has happened. But 2020 is about clarity, and it's about the fact that America has never been great, but it is on its course to become great. It can become great if, as Jay said earlier, white women and others continue to come to the forefront and work with us. It will become great when we recognize that we can stand and look power in the eye and push it aside when we recognize the power of our money. It can become great when we recognize that we are more together by our similarities. I mean, you look at, for instance, a place like Wilmington, North Carolina, that was burned down. And you had an African-American community that was working with the poor white community. My point in all this is that we've got to find ways that we don't always have this purist kind of well, if you're not this, then it doesn't work. We've got to figure out ways that around our similarities. That's the beauty of this country, is the fact that we are a nation of tribes, a nation of communities, and that we can work together. But I truly believe that you want to address the isms of sexism, racism, xenophobia, etc., that we work on this one of racism, that it will help to be the thing that tumbles the rest of the things down. I don't know if Paul, you wanted to go next, or Errol, if you had something to say.
Yeah. Just real quick, I think another thing that I think is poignant is that this new generation that's standing up, they've been through Oscar Grant. They've seen Oscar Grant. They've seen Earl Garner. They've seen Philando Castile. So when the George Floyd jumped off, they was like, oh, come on now, this is enough. We've seen all of our brothers and sisters, get murdered, and this is done. And especially in Minneapolis, because that's where Philando got killed at. So, the epicenter, having the epicenter be in Minneapolis, I don't think is a coincidence, because that's, we've seen it all. And the youth, enough is enough. You're not going to kill no more of us with impunity.
Right.
Something has to happen.
Trayvon and Michael Brown were also in their generation.
Right. I couldn't think of them, but Trayvon, Michael Brown.
I'm just saying, but they are this same. If they were still alive, they would be this age, that age of Generation Z. So it's real personal when it's somebody you're like, man, that could have been me. That's my age.
Right. They identify with it, and the one thing that I always say is that, when we look at the total sum of what these men lost their lives for, we're talking a cumulative probably about $30 tops.
Yeah.
A cigarette on the street in New York City, a fake $20 bill, some snacks in Ferguson, things like that. And you kind of begin to kind of say, at what point what must we not be stopped? At what point must we can kind of continue on? But Jay, I've got a question for you based upon what Atiba kind of laid out in terms of your family background. What was the auntie or what was the moment who fostered this kind of sense of humor in spite of what you were hearing from your dining room table growing up? You know, who was the auntie that said it was okay to laugh, smile, and be funny in addition to being brilliant, bright, and available for others? Talk a little bit about that, because I think that is one of those moments that this generation needs to understand, is that the fostering of creativity in aside to academic achievement is equally as important.
That's an amazing question. It has never been
Really
posed
is.
to me like that. So I also
went to a
want to
state
say,
school.
look, I also want to.
So.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I would say it's a combination of my maternal grandparents. My granddaddy was the clown, but my grandmother was the person who said, if it can cross your mind that you, then try it. Like if it comes across your mind and it is not going to kill other people, right? She didn't care if other people didn't want you to do it, or if nobody had done it before, or even if she didn't like it. My grandmother would tell me, you can do whatever you want to do. If you can have the thought, then that means the Lord believes you can do it. Otherwise, your brain couldn't have conjured up that thought. So my grandmother was the person who created the dream and the idea that literally nothing is off limits. And my granddaddy was the clown that just was constantly, I got in more trouble with him than any of my friends. My grandfather and I were always in some amount of, we were on punishment. I was like, how are we getting in trouble? You the daddy. Like, we should not, how are we both stuck in the house and grounded? Like, you supposed to be able to tell them we can go wherever we want because you the oldest and you pay the bills. And he would just be like, I'll explain it to you when you get older. I now know that my grandmama really controlled everything, but I thought, you know what I mean? I thought it was him because he talked a good game, but it was the combination of those two. And what I saw in all of my family, well, not all of them, that's a lie. In the 5 main people who impacted me, my parents, my maternal grandparents, and my mom's sister, is that whatever naturally comes to you that others respond to positively, that is your God-given talent. Do your best to not deny it, lean into it, harness it. Now, I ran from this comedy thing because you couldn't go to school for it, right? I came out of civil rights. What you're supposed to do is go to school, get you a good education. Get you a good old education. They can't take that. Get that paper. They can't take that from you no matter what they do. You can go anywhere. You can move out of America, go to Germany and be an engineer. If you be an engineer if you want to. So I came from the you got to go to school to get something that cannot be snatched. Right. Comedy could be snatched. There wasn't no comedy school, so it never even dawned on me as a thing. But I meandered and I morphed, and 4 careers later, out of a stroke of luck, or probably not luck, out of divine intervention, life brought me here. So yeah, grandparents.
But all that experience, all that knowledge, all that learning you got.
That's exactly what my granddaddy would say, learning. He was so mad whenever I did something outside of what my learning was. What you went up there for all that, get all that schooling and all that learning, and now you over here. And then he would just hand the phone to my grandmama because he was mad at me if I did anything other than what my degree said. He said, I don't understand. He could not understand that.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm glad you stepped out on your own, and you know, it's
go ahead.
No, I mean, it's necessary. We need it, and I appreciate it. And you dropped knowledge today, sister.
Thank you.
I'm gonna say this, Jay. So, you know, whenever I introduce something new, the first question that my very, very talented team asks, is she funny?
Right.
That was Earl. That was Earl.
That was not me. I've been on a mic before. I know I've done stand up. I am never going to say that about somebody until they start speaking.
And then the next thing was, well, you know, not every comedian can do it. You saw how people reacted to Dave Chappelle. Not everybody can react if the audience isn't like there laughing with them. So, but that I'll say, I think Paul mentioned Dave Chappelle, and I think that what he did I guess about a week or two ago, that many people have watched now, was just amazing. I think
it's brilliant. Brilliant.
What you just did today was brilliant. We continue to evolve with what this show is, and the whole idea, and you've been involved with us from the beginning with the sports memorabilia, with your comedy. It's what Party Politics has always been about, is how do we integrate the arts? How do we integrate sports? How do we bring in music, all of it, into this framework of politics, because it's politics in all of it. And with the way that I think that politics works and the way that we get things done is based off of relationships. So I think that that's what this is all about. It's about how we all getting together on this ship and figuring out how to move it in a direction, and recognizing we all have different viewpoints and different experiences, but how do we go and get to a common goal? So with that,
I didn't bomb for you, Atiba. So it seemed like your team was looking at you side-eyed. I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm happy.
Always Earl. It's me and Iata to keep everything moving.
Right.
So like I said, it's always about relationships and politics. So you went in politics, you figure out how to build a team where you always have your votes lined up. So Earl keeps getting outvoted. Hey, we want to have music. I don't know if that's gonna work.
I don't know. Right.
I'm all about the audio and how's it going. I'm like, just make it work. Just make it work.
How's it gonna look?
But you need the grumpy uncle. Thank you, Earl. You need the grumpy uncle to keep the wheels oiled.
But we're not gonna send you in the wrong direction.
I'm just saying, it is, if I want to, it's impossible to out diva me. But I just haven't found one of those hills worth dying on yet.
I'm going to use that again later.
That's a t-shirt. That is a t-shirt. That is a t-shirt.
Diva Earl. Earl.
I'm just saying, I have yet to see one of those hills worth me dying on. So it's all good.
No, but,
I mean, he was kind of like Red from the Five Heartbeats at one point, but go ahead.
I want to thank DJ Paul Howard, who we're going to go to in a second. But before we do that, I want to again thank you, JSmiles, for coming on. I definitely hope that we're able to have you on again now that my distinguished panel has had a chance to see you live and in person. She didn't have to rehearse, did she?
No,
Earl, she did, Earl.
Okay, first of all, seldom. Way off there, I'm gonna call you by your name.
You know the 5 footer gonna back me up.
You know I got your back, brother.
Right. That's right. You was Ali Shaheed, Earl. You was Ali Shaheed when it came to JSmiles.
So before,
I was not.
I don't.
Oh no.
I don't know. People gonna understand. I left my wallet in El Segundo. I don't. Go ahead.
Before we end this part,
it was my pleasure and my honor, especially to handle this content on this day. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do what I'm gonna call infotainment or comeditorial, because everybody, all producers will not allow me the freedom of the angle that you all did. Some people are like, hey, Jay, we would like you to give us 4 laughs per minute. And I'm like, well, if you watch 846, Dave Chappelle didn't get no laughs, but it is still probably going to win an Emmy and a Grammy and everything else you can win. Comedy isn't always laughing, but okay, all right. But Hambone, have you heard? Right. Okay, so anyway, so I appreciate you all for having enough intellectual bandwidth to understand that the art form of comedy has a few different lenses. And it would be my pleasure to come back at another time and chop it up with you guys and do some more this more conscious comedy.
I'm
So
gonna correct you real quick.
We're gonna do a real quick lightning round after.
Wait a minute. Before we go to that, let me say this. Dave Chappelle did get a laugh when he was talking about Ja Rule. Okay, go ahead.
You know what else? I'm gonna tell you when he got a laugh, when he said, "Oh, hell." He said, "Hell, ain't nothing funny about this." And then everybody laughed when he said, "Oh God."
Candace, the joke about Candace Owens was pretty funny too.
Huh?
The joke about Candace Owens was pretty funny too.
That was true.
Candace Owens herself is a joke. What do we got?
That all said, let's do a lightning round real quick. And the question for a lightning round, you all don't know, is what movie or what thing today, and when I say thing, like what in history would you want our audience to maybe go watch a movie, or what movie would you might recommend, or something that has happened in history that you would recommend them to go see real quick?
I need the question again. I'm sorry.
So today's Juneteenth. If you were to recommend a movie or a time in history for those who are watching to go and either watch or to go and research, what would it be?
I could start. Do the Right Thing.
Word.
My favorite Spike Lee movie.
Word. I was going to say the episode of Juneteenth on ATL, Donald Glover's show. I thought it wasn't terribly deep, except for he found a way to illustrate the experience in a modern day sense, in a supposedly integrated family that was celebrating Juneteenth. It was kind of meta all at one time, but I just thought it was brilliantly done. It's almost everything he touches. So yeah, Donald Glover's episode of Atlanta titled Juneteenth.
Nice.
I'm gonna do a nod to your background, Atiba, and your video playing in the background, and I would say Watchmen.
Word.
Nice.
Seldom.
Do more history. Do more studying on Tulsa.
Please.
Or Jay.
I'm going straight old school. I want you to watch the whole series, the original, or read Roots.
I was about to say the same thing.
I'm so happy I'm in front of you then.
That's fine. No, that's fine. That's fine.
need that. What I figured out. Okay. I know it's supposed to be real quick. This is my first time. Can I get 30 seconds? Okay, thanks. So when I was in grad school, I got really, really close to a Jewish chick and a Canadian chick. Neither one of them were black, just in case you didn't know that. So what they could not believe, they just had never learned, even though they felt to themselves to be aware and evolve, they had no idea how much our families had been torn apart. Right? Because Jews, whoever made it out the Holocaust or did not make it out the Holocaust, they still can count back their family, right? And everybody else that's alive can find their family back for 3,000 years. And that is the first time that their eyes heard me on the Rodney King and all that was going on. I was like, do you understand what I say, what I'm saying? So I think for me, Roots underscores the idea of how torn apart our Black families in America have been since day one.
I like it. Seldom.
The one movie, I mean, there's so many that kind of come to the top of mind, but I think the one movie that I would probably encourage everybody to kind of think about seeing to acknowledge who we are in America. It's kind of hard. I really don't have one, because there's so many out there that speak to a different aspect of our experience. But again, I think I have to kind of go with Roots, and I would have to go with the understanding of brutality of slavery. The thing that stood out for me is my mother walked us through Roots. That was a must-see TV for an entire week. I think the moment when Kunta was still saying, I'm not going to be called Toby, was the moment for me. That one episode, that one scene, and that was 1978 or 79, Dr. J, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I think it is Roots right there. And then the evolution of him losing his foot because he sought freedom was another pivotal moment in my life that I've never been able to get past. And I think by today's standard, the brutality of slavery can be seen very much so in Django Unchained. And so that would be the movie that I will build off of what you said. I think what Quentin did with that in terms of researching and expressing brutality is still very much relevant in today's discussion, because what we're experiencing is not too far from the plantation now.
And I'm going to end this. I agree with every one of the ones that you all mentioned. I'm going to say Rosewood with an addendum.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
I would say watch Rosewood, but go and then do the research, because while the story, the way that I'm glad that they told the story about Rosewood, but if you go and you read the actual account, and this is just, you know, me bringing my political part of it into it. There was a legislator in Florida named Josephus Eglinton, who I read a book, who was the one who spearheaded the legislation to appropriate money to those families.
Mm-hmm.
I was with Josephus, Joe, in Vancouver at a meeting and had just met him. And I had no idea his connection to Rosewood, but I was reading a book about Rosewood. And after I left him is when I got to the part in the book about him. It's really interesting how things happen in life, because it allowed me, because we built a relationship, to call him and ask him about that. And he walked me through the legislation, what he went through, and the legislature in Florida around it. But I really think that story of Rosewood, where a white woman who was cheating on her husband is caught, and I won't tell you all the whole story, but I will tell you that there's a story that has happened to repeat itself over and over again, where this woman had not been raped by a black man. She was, I guess, the Karen of her day, and as a result, they burned. And as a result,
look, Karen also has ancestors.
Yeah, she does.
Word.
And as a result, because that's how Tulsa started. So, you know, if look up the history, my friends, because you all may hear us say stuff, but when you actually, if you do the research yourself, it's there. It may not be taught in your schools. For instance, Tulsa was called Nigger Town. And this was a 35-block radius in Greenwood of African-American businesses that were not just businesses. These were wealthy African-Americans, and they burned and they bombed it. And Rosewood was a town.
They had paper.
They had paper. And Rosewood was a town of people in Florida, African-Americans who had more than the white folk who lived next to them. And they were jealous, and they were just looking for a reason to burn it down. So you don't believe me? Look it up yourself. Rosewood, Tulsa, look up Wilmington, and there are a whole lot of other times when people keep talking about their town. Why are they looting? Why are we tearing stuff down? Well, I would say go and look at how much shit white folks, white men with their white sons have gone and burned down of ours. Because if they hadn't, we'd be a whole lot further ahead than we are right now. So that all said, I'm not going to end this with Happy Juneteenth. I'm sure that maybe some of you are probably like, wow, that's a little deep with the way that we're ending the show, but that's the reality, and that's our reality. And I see DJ Paul
And it's
Howard.
your show, so.
I'm sorry?
I said, and it's also your show. You end it however you want.
So, thank you. It has Black Panther in the background, and I know a whole lot of us probably went to go see that. I think, Jay, you went to go see it probably like 50 times?
I went every single week that it was in the theater.
Wow.
Even when I was out of the country.
Oh, wow.
I found it, and I watched it in other languages. I was like, whatever, popcorn. I know the words.
And for those of you all out there wondering why we embraced the movie so much, it was because it was the first time we got to see ourselves on film that way that we know that we are, as well as the fact that we have been told for so long, well, we don't make black films because they don't make money, and yet this one made over $1 billion. So anytime you give us a chance to do something, we do it, and we do it well. So that all said, thank you to our special guest, DJ Paul Howard. We're going to turn it over to you. JSmiles, thank you. Earl, Seldom, Nayada, we'll be back next Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, and we're going to be talking about a real hard topic. It's going to be about the word nigger. And we're going to have some music. All right.
We got to play the Richard Pryor clip on that one.
Right.
Man. All right.
Y'all don't take a break.
You can't.
Hey,
There's no time.
Gotta go.
There's no time to take a break.
You know, we only got a small window to tell our story.
You ain't lying. Look, let me go take a nap. I gotta sleep from now to Wednesday.
Today, we've used all of it today.
Thank you, DJ Paul Howard. I can't wait to hear what you got on the one.
Okay, Jay.
Okay. Let's go to DJ Paul Howard.
Thank you so much for coming, Jay.
I think he's waiting.
It's my pleasure.
All right,
Y'all
I'll
have
switch
a
it over
great
now. All right, we're out. Everybody have a good show. No, thanks for the show.